Hey, looks like we're live. Okay, everybody, welcome to the Student Games Festival Engineering Panel. I hope you're all enjoying the stream so far. My name is Kyle, and I'll be moderating the panel for today. First, I want to introduce all of our esteemed guests who together have over 50 years of experience in the video game industry. So we've got Tim Ford, Assistant Tech Director at Blizzard Entertainment, David Green, Chief Engineer and Designer at Altered Mechanics, and Curtis Murphy, VP of Engineering at MobilityWare. So everybody please give a big round of applause at home and put all your pog chants in the Twitch chat right now for all of our speakers. Yay! And
Get it out
thank
of your
you
system.
all so much for being here and taking the time. Also, thanks to MobilityWare for sponsoring this event. Curtis Murphy is the VP of Engineering at MobilityWare, and he himself has been personally very supportive of this event as well. So big thank you to MobilityWare. Now, everyone in the audience, feel free to use the Twitch chat to post any questions you have for our panelists. We will address them towards the end of the panel. And I'll just be presenting questions to the panelists to get the conversation rolling. And then you guys are free to jump in and out of the conversation whenever you want. And we just want to have an interesting conversation between our audience and the three of you. And hopefully there'll be some interesting advice for students looking to get into the game industry. All right. Okay. Thanks again. And okay, so just to start out, please just let the audience know a little bit more about you guys and what are your specialties, and like maybe what's your proudest achievement in your career.
Wow.
Self-organized. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, just
Go for it. You spoke. You're up.
Oh shoot! I was trying to buy time. It's the old. You're in an interview and you have a tough question. You just grab your drink of water.
Yeah. Pass it off to somebody
That's a
else.
great question. Yeah. So my name's Tim Ford. I'm on the Overwatch team. I've been on Overwatch since the beginning. I've been at Blizzard now for 10 years. My current role is Assistant Tech Director, which means you can graph like how much time I spent coding, which has dropped off a cliff, to how much time I spend just working across the team, solving problems, and providing both technical as well as limited creative and gameplay direction. My background is as a gameplay programmer. Lately, I actually, for one day out of the week, I do get to participate in a fairly intense technical fun stuff, including coding. We have a game engine that Blizzard is ramping up, so I'm part of that initiative. So I do get to write semicolons from time to time, which is nice. But other than that, my day-to-day is mostly talking to people about their feelings and making sure that we're identifying cool computer science abstractions to make video games fun.
Cool. David?
Cool. So my name is David Green. I am the Chief Engineer and Designer for Altered Mechanics, and I also work as a consultant in the digital entertainment and immersive training industries. So I started off back in the 90s, working in civil and military simulation. I left that and joined Sony AAA way back early 2000s. Did AAA for about 7 years, 8 days, Getaway, a few of those other things until Dawn, PlayStation Home, and a few others. Then left that for the indie game industry, spent about 7 years building indie game companies. Biggest achievement there was working on Smash Cops, which was a 20 million plus downloaded and played game. Then left that, and I, for the last 10 years, been working in doing all sorts of crazy stuff, whatever I feel like doing each year, I do, including putting stuff up for the Super Bowl. That was social engagement platforms for the Super Bowl, Lollapalooza, Austin City Limits, done a robot interface for the ISS, a real estate platform for VR, and my latest company is Altered Mechanics, where we do out there prototypes for immersive entertainment locations like mech simulators, self-service kiosks, and all the rest. As far as my day-to-day, I do a bit of everything. So I do designing, coding, a little bit of art here or there. And yeah, like Tim, I spend a lot of my time managing teams.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And Curtis?
Thanks. So I'm Curtis Murphy, VP Engineering at MobilityWare. And I just have to say that David has absolutely the coolest freaking office.
He really does.
I win.
Like Mac chairs in the back. You can show him, David. You were showing us earlier. Just reach up and pull down
Oh,
your.
yeah. So I
Yes,
have
he's the,
headsets that hang down from
he's the
everywhere.
host of tech. So
I have all the toys.
I work
yes,
in a
One
kitchen.
room.
yes, you can see me, and I'm in my front office. So, yeah. So David is like what we all imagine that we end up as engineers, and I would say that David took the one path where he's like the engineer's engineer, and I took the other path. So I've been doing
Wait,
I don't
there's
know,
another path?
28 years. Yes, there's another path. There's a path that you're on, Tim. There's a path that you're on. Yes,
Oh,
where you
God.
don't code anymore. So,
Okay.
so I'm on Tim's path. So 28 years. I've done a lot of stuff. I've done military training games. I've done indie. It was indie for about 5 years. EA. Currently, I'm at MobilityWare. So what I do now is basically human engineering. And that means like what I'm doing today is helping all of you to enter the workforce, right? That's part of what I do. So I'm trying to reach out to help you grow, to work with the people that are doing SGDA. That's why we sponsor this kind of stuff, right? So I'm human engineering you along your path. And to me, that's how I see it. The people are just like code, and they're a lot more random. And they're a lot harder than programming,
Talking
and
about
yet it's still the
Westworld
same
stuff.
science. Yes, it's like Westworld stuff. So,
Yeah.
so that's how I see it. Help you get in, and then what does it look like in the next stage? So, yesterday we were graduating students from Laguna College. Tomorrow we're doing the SGDA and IEEE game competition where I'll judge. So I basically do the full spectrum. So the last thing I'll say is that I went engineer, then I turned designer. Long story. The end result of that, after years and years and years and years, is that I'm now the primary professor that teaches the game design course for the Laguna College Masters in Fine Arts. So that's me. I don't want to talk about me anymore. I want to talk about the students. So.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Okay, so you might have to talk about yourselves a little bit for this question, but it'll be helpful directed towards the students. So according to a lot of studies, the average game developer leaves the industry after about 3 to 6 years. What initially made you interested in game development, and why have you stayed in it? And what do you think is some important advice for a long and healthy career in games?
You guys want to snake back, Curtis? I want to volunteer you.
No, because I just spoke. I mean, I'm happy to. I want to hear David answer this, right? Because
Okay,
he's
yeah,
no kidding.
coding in it every day.
So my old
You don't all have
man,
to answer.
my father he was a simulation engineer way back in the 60s and 70s. And when I was growing up, he basically got me enthralled in writing code on machines, etc. And then through playing Commodore 64, Amiga, the Amiga is actually where I got my first taste in making video games back in the early 90s. I just hooked. I loved it. I love making stuff. I like being creative. I like doing out there things. And the games industry was a platform where I could do that. I remember turning around when I left doing big simulators for Thales Engineering way back in the day. I remember turning around to my father and saying, I'm leaving simulation, I'm going to making games. And he was like, is there any money in making games? Is that a good career choice? And I was like, well, the game I've just been hired to do has a $16 million budget. So I guess they're going to do okay out of it. And it was actually 8 days for Sony. I just love it. I mean, I play games regularly. I try and get a good 10 hours of gaming in a week. I don't have kids, so that helps. So I play games for 10 hours. I develop for 16 hours a day, probably some days, just because I enjoy doing it and I've always have. And nowadays, the stuff you can do on your own in a small team, and not just in building the games themselves, manufacturing, addictive manufacturing. This is one office I have. I also have a workshop in this house that has 3D printers, paint booths, that sort of thing. That doesn't have a CNC machine. It's a bone of contention for me at the moment. but because my other one's in another workshop down the road that I can't go to because social distancing. But yeah, for me, I've stayed in this industry because I don't want to do anything else, because I just enjoy it. Why leave something you enjoy doing? It's a simple answer for me.
Yeah. Tim, do you have anything to add before we go?
Yeah, I mean, so I worked at three like AAA companies, although two for a long window of time. When I started in the industry, was at Treyarch in 2001, and I was there for about a year and a half. So the two big companies I've worked at for a long enough time to form any meaningful opinions on were EA in Los Angeles. With Benson Russell, I'm actually looking forward to seeing him in his talk tomorrow. And then Blizzard now for the last decade. I think so I crunched a lot at EA. And I think if I were to provide some piece of advice around like work-life balance and how that operates, is a corporation is going to take whatever you are willing to give, but you can actually set your own boundaries on that and push back. It is actually possible. And the good news is, if you work at a place where you can't do that, there are plenty of places where you can do that, and you can pretty much tell them to pound sand. Maybe more good news, we'll see if there's any silver lining to being on quarantine for an undefined window of time, is that when we get on the backside of this, maybe more companies will be open to work from home. They'll be open to, because clearly this works. Like we're reasonably effective in spite of our constraints. So I think putting the power back in the employee to kind of define what they're comfortable with in terms of how much they're willing to crunch. So Blizzard, really, like, it was funny coming from working at EA for like 7 years to go work at Blizzard, and when Blizzard did like a crunch these days, it's like, that you call that a crunch? Like, really? That was like one extra hour on a Tuesday. That's a crunch? Okay. Obviously, it's an older company with older people with kids, and we just don't. These games absorb our lives anyway. There's no sense of sticking us in the office for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, like we did back at EA. So yeah, advocate for yourself. If you don't, a corporation will take advantage of you because they don't know any better. They're just trying to. If you're willing to work that many hours, they'll let you work that many hours. So just don't.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Cool. And now, yeah, Curtis, I've got a good follow-up question that I think would be good to start for you, but then other people can contribute after. As you were saying, you have a lot of experience as an engineer, but you also have a real strong passion for design.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to someone who's not sure if they want to be an engineer or a designer or vice versa? And is there a way to reconcile those two passions?
That is a fantastic question. This is Tim saying, take a deep breath here, pause some time. So I do both, and I actually love both. And I remember there were multiple points in my career where I'm coding every day, and I'm applying and pursuing going after a design position, and it was my wife was like, "Are you crazy?" So why would she throw the shoe at me? This is engineering talk, right? So don't let your designers know. Engineers make a lot more money. This is just a fact. So there's no dispute about it. Everyone on this call, I'm sure, will agree to the same thing. They just are. In addition, there's more engineering positions than there are designer positions, usually speaking. Varies depending on studio, whether there's more artists or more engineers, because it depends on whether you're art content heavy or coding heavy. I think it's universally true that there's less designers. So if you're trying to get into the industry, what's the best path? The best path is going to be get yourself an engineering degree, become good enough, find contacts, do all the things that you need to do, and then go from there and see where you want to go with it. For me, I love engineering. I still love engineering. I still do all the game jams at work. I still code. I still love solving those problems. It's just how my brain works. In my head, I'm like Dave. I just love the toys. I love the tech. I love solving problems. And like Tim, I'm a client game side programmer, right? Gameplay programmer. So
Yeah. So it just seems like if you have a passion for both those things, just keep pursuing engineering, but don't lose your passion for design, and just keep learning about
because there's
engineering.
a
But you can keep going either path.
Yeah, here's an interesting thing. I have two folks at Mobility where Matt and Greg, both who started at in their fields as engineers. They both have engineering degrees, and then over the course of their career, as they got more and more experience, they realized I really do want to be a designer. So rather than go back to school, they just made that pivot. And once they're in the industry and they know people, they can try those things out and they prove themselves. And now they're full-time designers. Greg and Matt are both lead designers for respective suites. So engineering is a fine path to get in there. You'll find that all the things that in your head, I find that all of my heroes in the design industry were formerly engineers, right? So Will Wright, right, Jonathan Blow, right? These people are people are coders turned designers. So it's all going to pay off in the end.
Cool. And okay, so kind of along that line, in addition to that, got a question I wanted to start with David. You're a very well-rounded engineer. You've done a lot of things, as you were talking about earlier, and right now you have a really strong passion for VR. There are a lot of specialties in the field of engineering. There's gameplay physics, graphics, UI, AI, networking. How do you think someone should go about finding and learning what niche in engineering field they enjoy?
Try them all. That's what I did.
Good.
There's no reason you can't. I started off at Sony as a tools engineer, became a tech producer for a while there, but I also done some back-end work to help with PlayStation digital comics, and done a few other bits and pieces. As a tools programmer, I got lucky. I got to work with designers and artists on a regular basis, helping them build the stuff that would go into the engines. And also, I sat between them and the actual programmers on the game engine itself, because back then Unreal had only just come out. So I got to try a lot of different aspects. And then when I left there and became indie, again, Unity wasn't around. Unreal wasn't anything to do with mobile or anything like that. So I wrote my own game engine for a few years, and then went and used Unity because Unity was out and about, and we were using that at other companies. So I'm going to try that. My whole thing is, why specialize early on? Have a play, enjoy yourself. As the coach was just saying, if you want to do some design, go and have a go. I mean, put yourself into it. Really give yourself some effort in putting in there. You can't just switch the tap on, as it were. Design is a course where you have to put as much effort in as you would do learning to code and being an engineer. You have to really work at it, iterate, look at the nuances and build yourself, become well-rounded in that. But there's no reason that you should fall into one specialization and stick there, unless you really enjoy it. If that scratches the itch for you and you love being that graphics coder and that's the thing that really gets you up in the morning and gets you going at it, excellent, go do it every single day. Not everybody has to spin and do different things constantly. I've got friends that started as one type of specialty and have stayed that way all the way through their career because they absolutely love doing it. Myself, I get bored easy and I just go and build something else and change up and write something else. And that includes languages. You don't have to just stick to one language. And if you do a game engine, get good at the language that goes with the game engine, outside of the game engine itself. So you shouldn't need to specialize on any one language either. And there are different types of languages, from functional, mathematical to object orientated. Again, go have a play. You might find something that surprises you that you didn't think would really be of interest to you, but once you get into it, the logic that goes into it or something that builds up in that is something that really gets you focused.
Yeah, what you said about iteration actually is a really good transition into a question that I had for Tim that I wanted to start with. Iteration's really important to creating a quality game, and Blizzard especially places a really high standard for quality in their games. It often takes several attempts to find the fun in a game and discover what works and what doesn't. From an engineering standpoint, what can be done to make iteration as easy and flexible as possible? How do you prepare for and implement changes that will lend themselves to flexibility without having to constantly refactor code?
Right. That's actually a pretty tricky question to unpack. I think there's process considerations there first and foremost. Like
Yeah.
you have to have the attitude of we're going to iterate on this code a lot, or iterate on I should say the problem that we're trying to solve a lot. Code being just part of the solution space. So by virtue of that, like don't architect speculatively, don't program speculatively, don't over engineer giant things, because your odds of actually getting it right when you go to turn it on after 6 months of sweat is like, oh, no, the problem space changed radically. This is totally worthless, right? So being able to kind of isolate small chunks of forward progress, what we call the minimum viable product, right? You want to get the 1.0 version working, and just don't be upset. You're going to ship like the 9.0 version, but we need to know now what this feels like, what this idea feels like. So what's the minimum reasonable part there? Of course, there's a tension between wanting to move quickly and get things in the game, which is like, how do you actually do that in an environment where you have maintainable, extensible systems, where you aren't hacking your way to add features day over day, and then fast forward 6 months later, you have just a pile of garbage code that you're not going to be able to ship or make performant or make maintainable by a large engineering staff of 50 people. So there's a balance there that I think comes with experience. You really just have to kind of go through the motions to know what it is. Obviously, I have strong opinions in terms of architectural approaches that you can take to make it easier to be very concise with your abstractions, and then mix and match abstractions to yield the behavior that you want. That's paid pretty big dividends for Overwatch, because Overwatch, it is a shooter, but it's a shooter with 32 different heroes that do radically different things, and making a technology that's going to be flexible to do all sorts of crazy crap is a challenge. And I'm proud of the team. I think we had a good solution there, managing the tension between wanting to work quickly but also wanting to make maintainable code.
Cool. All right. Now we've got, let's see, it's around 30 minutes, so I'll probably start taking like some questions from the Twitch chat and the Discord. So first off, and this for any of you guys, again, just if you have anything to add to anybody else, anything you want to add, anything you want to say, feel free to jump in and out of this whenever you want. A very common question that is asked is what skills you should learn and what you should put on your resume and cover letter. But this is often dependent on specific situations and your field, and maybe like the team that's hiring's personal preference. So I'll ask it in a more general way or personal way. What are some skills that you believe are universal in the field of engineering, and what skills, technical or soft, do you personally want someone on your team to have?
Oh man. So
Wow, that
soft
is
skills.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We have 30 minutes left.
yeah.
Let's go. All right.
Name every
so
product.
I'll go with soft skills, since I've just been focusing on the soft skill space for a
Yeah.
long time now. So humility and intellectual honesty, which I think kind of go hand in hand. And part of that, when I work with big teams, right? So part of that when you're working with the team is the ability to, the humility to say, I don't know, and ask for help. It is incredibly common for certainly engineers coming out of school, going and becoming associate engineers in the industry, to have this nagging feeling in the back of their head that if they ask for help, that's a sign of weakness, and they don't want to expose themselves for the fraud they are. You're already a fraud. You're new at this. You have no fucking idea what you're doing. So it's totally. My kids live at the house, so I'm all right. So it's fine, right? Like you should have this attitude of, I don't know. I'm here to learn. I'm here to grow. Right? I am humble. I don't know squat. And it, like, if you really jam on that for a bit, what you realize is it's incredibly fulfilling. I want to kind of take back one of the answers I gave. I think I just crapped on EA too much when I talked about crunch. I think one of the main reason I stay in the industry, and even this was true at EA, the main reason I stay in the industry is because I am working with geniuses, and I get to learn from these people every single day. And what's even better, particularly I'm fortunate to be on a really large game team, is I have geniuses in engineering, I have geniuses in design and art and production and QA and automation and reliability and server and metagame systems. Like I am up to my eyeballs in incredibly delightful, humble geniuses who can't wait to teach me shit every single day. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. Does anyone else
And
have anything to add?
And
Yeah.
just to reiterate, that point about asking questions when you get into the industry is absolutely vital. Like, he's right. And it comes from the interviewing process and the competitiveness to get into this industry at the moment, because there's so many people going for those. So, it's a lot of jobs there, but not enough to fill everybody that really wants to get into it. So you get this competitive nature of, I've got to challenge myself to get into this industry. And once I'm in, I beat out all these people. I can't show any weakness when it gets to, you've got to ask questions. He's absolutely right. You are a fraud. Everybody is. I still am.
To also expand on that, another question that we get a lot is, once you get that first job, what can you do to make sure that you start off right, make sure that you hit the ground running, and that you excel and get up to speed quickly? And how can you continue to learn while you're on your job?
Ask questions and learn from the talent around you.
Yeah.
I think everybody's a genius there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the answers are actually the same. I loved Dave and Tim, both of your answers. So I look at hundreds of resumes. I interview all the time. I don't even have a clue how many interviews I've done. I'll just be open and say, here's what we're hiring for. This is our 3 hiring criteria. You ready? This is it. Team fit, Unity, programming. Notice the order. Team fit, Unity, programming. We reject more people from team fit than anything else, whether it's my first call, whether I reject them because I met them at a conference. If we were in person and we'd be talking after, I can reject you in like 30 seconds. It's like, aggressive, obnoxious, not listening.
Yeah.
He asked a question, I gave him an answer, and then he argued with me. You're done. Right? Like, you don't hear me arguing with Tim and David. Like, no, dude, that's awesome. Oh, I love his room, right? Tim, what can I learn from you, right? You're in a totally different world than I'm in. I do mobile games. Tim's doing Overwatch. Man, they're both awesome. What can I learn from him? What can I learn from Dave? He's an engineer's engineer, right? Like, you can see it in the 3 of us. We're all passionate. We love our industry. And you just have to be focused on growth all the time, all the freaking time. Never ends. And I'll give you a story. Yesterday was the thesis defense for the Laguna College of Art and Design, right? So these are the graduates in a master's program of game design, okay? So they've gone that next step. All of them have, industry experience, or not all of them. A lot of them have industry experience. They have all kinds of stuff, and they've worked ridiculously hard for 2 years. So they got their undergrad, they have some work experience, and now they have 2 years on top of that. So they're further along than all of you, right? They're graduating and we're all celebrating, and I'm like, this is an awesome moment. You should totally celebrate all the hard work you just did. And you have to remember, this is just the beginning of your learning. You're just tipped the very tip of the iceberg of what it means to be a designer in the industry of games that has, even the 3 of us just on this call. There's so many game types. There's so many different ways to monetize. There's so many different ecosystems and niches and targets, and the difference between even a first-person shooter and a MOBA and this and that and VR. And if you it's like there's just this world that's so big, and you cannot possibly know it all. You can't. So you are responsible. I'm responsible. Tim and David, Kyle, we all have to just every day be like, what am I learning? Set aside the ego. Oh, I can learn something from Kyle. Well, Kyle's at a totally different place from me. Like, well, he's running this event. I've never run an event like this. Wow, there's some cool tech going on in here. And how's he coordinating it, right? And we were talking about that on the phone. Like, hey, this is kind of cool, right? This is a cool engineer sort of tech. The server's involved, the backend's involved. And if you just start thinking about that, right? That's what David was after. Hey, give it a go. Maybe you want to do some network programming and figure out how all this streaming crap works, right? Give it a go. Just keep learning.
Great answer. Very passionate answer. And yeah, you've been asking a lot of questions about the tech. We're glad that it's going so well so far.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got a specific question from Nandan from Cal Poly Pomona. He wants to know, what are some good practices to improve your workflow when programming? Like, what tools do you use to make your life easier? Maybe keep yourself organized.
Oh boy. All right, guys, we got 25 minutes left.
Yeah.
Someone take a swing at
Actually,
this.
only like 15 minutes, but
Oh dear.
I'll cover it real quick,
Good.
and then Dave, I'll hand it back over to you because he's still coding every day, right? So get yourself a good editor. We use Writer. Get some tools that you really like. Give it a go. I love this expression so much. Just really engage with it. Learn how to use the tool to the max. Learn how to peer review each other's work. Use tools like Crucible, use Git, use the different industry standard tools. For Pete's sakes, use Unity. It's free. Or use Unreal. It's free. Like just use the industry standard tools. All the stuff about workflow and pipelines and this kind of stuff, that's not really the problem you should be solving right now. Become good at coding, become good at building your tech, build your tools, whatever it is you're doing, develop skills that we actually want to hire. I don't need somebody who's good at the connections of the software and writer and tools and workspaces and that kind of stuff. Now I need pipeline engineers and tools engineers. That's a wholly different thing.
Yeah, and on top of that, for myself, I have a few companies running at the moment, and with coding and the rest, it's task management. My day management for me is a big thing. I very quickly get down a rabbit hole where I find myself in a room playing with solenoids for an entire day, and the sun's gone up and gone down, and suddenly I've completely lost track of time. So I monitor my time quite carefully because I can, as I've said before, I can spend hours and hours a day just working on something, and my wife is good enough to just leave me the hell alone most of the time because I don't even think she likes me. But it's very easy to look at your day and get lost in what you're doing. And yeah, you'll have producers when you're at big studios, and yeah, you have everything else, but time management for yourself is a big thing, especially now you're working from home, even more so. You can get lost in other things going on. You've got kids, you've got things that got to happen around the house, and it's right there. You can do it right away. I use Trello a lot because, again, it's free. But I task manage all the projects that are under what I'm doing, the teams I manage for different consultancy companies and the rest. I manage all of those on there and the time management on that. And I spec out all my various aspects of my day through things. And at the end of the day, I sit down and I assess what I've done and what's come off my list, what's gone on my list, and the priorities in there. So outside of your general, I use Visual Studio, I use Unity, GitHub, Audacity, GIMP. I don't use Photoshop, weirdly.
Keep it free.
Maya is my 3D one of choice just because I was a tools programmer for Maya for 3 years, so I stick with that. Whereas Blender's amazing, but it's just the way it is. So yeah, the tools are great, but for me, time management is very important as well.
That's great. We also have a kind of question that we can just add to that just a little bit. Hello World, I don't know how to say your name, from Twitch chat, wants to know how when you make code changes, how you are able to get your code to get able to see changes in game quickly. What sort of tools do you guys use, or how have your companies handled iteration, being able to make changes and see those changes happen as quickly as possible?
I have secret stuff I can't talk about,
Yeah.
but for Overwatch, a lot of the game code is done through our scripting system, which just it hot reloads. So like if you're working on a hero and you're like, oh, I need, I want to change like the animation playback speed for Zenyatta's attacks, go into script, do some numbers, maybe change the logic around, layer in another animation, hit save, and you just, here's new Zenyatta with the new stuff, and you're good to go.
Yeah, a lot of that just happens. Usually script is used to help with rapid iteration like that. Okay, so see, a lot of people like to ask about like your struggles or what you've struggled on recently. So if it's been said that it's like important to fail and fail quickly so you can learn from your mistakes. Is there a specific experience that you can talk about where you wish that you or your team had done something differently? If you're able to do it again, what would you change? How do you learn from those experiences?
I have a pragmatic example because I worked on
Sure.
the Project Titan for 4 years before we canceled it and moved on to something else. But I think that the story there is not an I wish. That was a, oh yeah, this is what you would do, and here's how it played out. At a high level, I would say this is your hindsight bias working. What worked going from Titan to Overwatch was on Titan we lacked crisp direction. So if you think of a large, 140 person team that's trapped in the forest of what the hell is your game, everyone's wandering in a different direction, chopping down trees, trying to find what the game is. No one has said, it's over there, that's where we're going. So you hire a bunch of talented developers, they're just going to go in whatever direction they think is the right one, and they'll just go. And then when we kind of rebooted and scaled the team down dramatically to start Overwatch, day one was like, that's what Overwatch looks like. Do you guys understand what it looks like? Cool. I'm going to put like every one of you in a room under like an intense light. I'm going to ask you, what is Overwatch? And you're going to say precisely what it is because you know what it is. Okay, now we're going to make it. And it was obviously, when you start, it's not, we're going that way. It's more like we're going somewhere in that cone. And then over time, as you iterate and focus on what the game is, that cone shortens down to like the actual finished product. So yeah, have clean direction on every discipline: design, production, art, and engineering.
That's great. And does anybody else have anything to add? It doesn't have to tell about a specific experience unless you have something really good that you want to talk about. But you can also just, how do you make sure that you're learning from those mistakes and make sure that you're able to identify problems quickly?
Identify the things that you did wrong yourself, not a team thing. If you're going to improve yourself, look at what you did to improve the situation. Were you a person that was trying to push things forward and make progress in there, or were you a person that was holding things back? What could you have done better? And all the rest of it? The most important word is you. What can you do to solve the situations? I mean, I've built several companies that have failed. I've built several companies that have succeeded over the years, and each one has its own lesson to learn from it. And every time I sit there and look back at some of those things, I say, well, what could I have done better? Could I have put a little bit more time in? Could I have tweaked it? Was the direction right when we started off? What was the due diligence we did when we started that particular company or that particular product? To make sure market focus was there. Was the due diligence big enough to make sure that we were actually getting everybody involved in it? If you're making a game as an indie or something like that, one of the things you learn very quickly is get it into other people's hands. Don't trust yourself. Even if you're an amazing designer, amazing engineer, you've built successful games all the way through, you can very quickly think you are making something amazing that just isn't, that people aren't interested in.
Still game dev goggles.
That's the one, game dev goggles. There's a reason we have vertical slices in the AAA industry. A very good reason, and that's to make sure the thing's worth continuing. Make sure that thing is actually going to produce money if money's the thing you're after. If you're not after money, then fine, cool. I'd love to be you. But and some people like that. Plenty of people like that have got more money than sense. But
I don't know.
Yeah, learn from the mistakes you make yourself and how you can improve as a team. How you can put you more engagement yourself into that. That's the only thing I take out.
A lot of that goes
I'd like to add something to Dave's. So I completely agree with everything Dave said, and Tim also. The challenge I had for me was back in like 9 years ago, so like in 2011. That's when I started my own company, and so I remember exactly thinking this, dude, I've already got like 16 years experience. I'm an awesome coder. I have all of this stuff. I know exactly what I'm doing, built my own engines, blah, 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 all of this stuff. And I remember thinking, I'm going to start my own indie company. I'm going to make mobile games. And in like 6 months, I'm going to replace my income because, it's the golden age of development and mobile games, and I'm awesome. And I was wrong. And as David just hinted, I do still need money. So that obviously didn't work out. And that's fine. The problem I had is that early on in that phase, I did not have the mental strength and fortitude to accept that failure was just a step in the process to becoming awesome. that was not where I was at. So everything that David just said is totally true. And it wasn't where I was in 2011. And I started this company and I put out a product and 3,000 people downloaded it. Oh my God, what's wrong with me? I'm a failure. And I got depressed. And then I tried to make another one. And then I got depressed. And then I'm just like, this, I thought I was awesome. And I got stuck instead of trying to work my way through. And if I could go back in time, I would have tried to help a younger me like 20 years ago. Because obviously 2011, I already had lots of years and I can't imagine how far I would have gotten if I had learned early on. Dude, failure is just a part of the process. Fail fast, fail as often and quickly as you can, and then just go, cool, I tried, I failed. What did I learn from it? Instead of like, oh no, I'm a failure. And that I wish I could have learned earlier.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of that seems to go back to what you were saying to how to excel at your job once you first get your job. To ask questions of people and just identify what's not working and just try to keep looking. Okay, so let's see. We have about 5 minutes left. So before we wrap up the panel, I thought it'd be a good idea to ask all of you, what's the one thing that you wish you would have known earlier in your career? What advice?
After I just answered that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
you
think
just
you-
answered that, so that's fine.
I'm gonna take Curtis's
what
answer.
would you have said to yourself if as an aspiring game dev student?
With hindsight, I would have said take certain shares in certain companies. I think.
Buy a lot of NVIDIA stock.
That would have been a lot easier in life. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's you're just never going to know with those sort of things. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I'm living my best life. I don't know.
I think I would. I'm not sure if I'd grab myself by the scruff of the neck if I was reaching through a time portal to basically share the idea of being intellectually honest and humble. And part of that would be, for example, like if you make a mistake, what you're supposed to do is say, "I'm sorry. How can I fix it?" Right, as opposed to making excuses. Or if you don't know something, asking for help. Obviously, I've jumped on that for a bit, but yeah, I think understanding that you are not going to engender positive, not like you want to really engender positive relationships with the people that you work with, and part of that is having that humility.
Yeah, it's great. Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't know if I want to
Go ahead.
answer that question. I did want to share
Sure.
a story. So
Yeah.
almost exactly a year ago, we had the SGDA and the IEEE GameSig were separated. So this year they're combined, which I think is absolutely awesome. It would have been so
Yeah.
great if we were in person to meet all of these people and all these things back to back.
Yeah.
Next year we'll all be in at a college somewhere, and it's going to be great, and we'll see everybody in person. So that'll be awesome.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, why do I feel a little bit like it's not great? And the reason is this. For each of you that are listening right now, there are so many things that you can do to get into the industry. And I'm just going to throw out some things. Apply for internships. Build some freaking games.
Practice,
The tools are all
practice.
free. Yes. Just there's no excuse for you to like, I don't have any games on my resume. Why not build some cruddy games and put them up on itch? I don't care where you put them. Who cares? I just want to see that you're doing stuff. And I'll share what that looks like in practice. So last year we went to the SGDA and I'm walking around trying to see all the competitors. And I walk over and I go, "Oh, cool! I know you." And oh, you heard that, right? I know you. Oh, that's a good way to get, it doesn't make you awesome and get you hired, it gets you connected so that then you can showcase your skills and meet the right people and then go from there. And here's how that worked. I know you, show me what you're working on. Oh, this is your team, show me them. Oh, nice to meet you. Oh, nice to meet you. Whoa, you got 3 engineers? Where are you guys working? Oh, that's interesting. Well, let's fast forward. The one that I knew was an intern at MobilityWare. The other 2, one of them became an intern at MobilityWare, and then the third one graduated early. So we just interviewed her and we hired her. So all 3 of those team members now work at our studio. 2 of them work for me and one of them work in one of the other suites. So think that through and learn lessons from that. That is how you get in the industry. You do all the things that Tim and David and I were talking about today to become awesome, to be humble, to just improve yourself, and then go make connections, go meet people, build games, do game jams, do the things that will put you in contact with the people that can help you take the next steps in your career.
That's a great note to end on. Does anybody have anything else to add before
I
we
wouldn't dare.
go? Yeah, that's perfect note. Yeah, thank you all. That was really great, Curtis, for bringing that full circle. Thank you for that. Yeah, and then thank you again. Thank you, Curtis. Thank you, David. Thank you, Tim, for all taking the time to do this and to answer questions. I think it's really important for students to hear what you've just said. It's good, important for the industry, and it's especially important right now to this kind of interaction from people. So again, yes, thank you, and everybody at home. Okay, get your PogChamps ready. You know, give everybody a big round of applause. All of our speakers. Yay, guys! Thank you. Imagine thunderous applause.
Yay!
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
And we hope to see you guys around. Enjoy all the other streams, guys. Next one up is audio. Yeah. Take care, everybody. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.